Well, come in, Lewis Hamilton, your time in F1 is up. Or is it? There'll be a total of 8 drivers on the grid. Sorry, 8, will either have their contracts expiring or pretty much left up in the air with no one really quite sure what a multi-year deal even means. And the first one being, of course, Lewis Hamilton. As we all know, his contract negotiations take ice ages to actually form. It's going to be a little bit complicated because he has many fingers in many pies. But one of the big factors of him staying in Formula 1 was, of course, the big Mercedes upgrades. They came about in Monaco, and ever since, Mercedes have actually been improving in terms of their performances. It was a make or break time that Monaco weekend. If those upgrades hadn't actually yielded any performance, Lewis probably would have called it a day, or gone somewhere else. We even heard rumours about him going to Ferrari for $40 million a year, but that's probably not going to happen right now. These contracts most likely will yield something in the region of a 2-year extension, going to 2025, and then after that, a 10-year ambassadorship where he basically wears a Mercedes cap around and sometimes comes to Grand Prix and basically just says, oh yeah, cool, Mercedes, aren't they a great team? He's basically going to become the next Niki Lauda. His time in Formula 1 will probably be around until the next change in rules or something like that. I doubt that he'll go any further than 2025. Unless he sees something really cool in terms of the car for 2026. Then we might have to redo this video. I'm gonna lump these two together because Haas has pretty much got a good lineup which they don't really need to change. After the whole debacle with Nikita Mazepin and Mick Schumacher, and even back in the days of Esteban Gutierrez, it's quite clear that Haas is not a place for rookies. You need to be a hardened veteran who has something to prove and can take a lot of stick from the likes of Gunther Steiner. Nico has a 2-year contract. Well, why am I saying that he could leave in 2023? Well, it's a 1+1 sort of thing. Haas haven't yet exercised the option to add that extra year to his contract, but they most likely will. And Kevin Magnussen, his contract was kind of a similar thing, but most likely they'll extend it as well, because Magnussen and Hulkenberg, their differences have been put aside and they get on well together. They'll just muck in until Haas actually improve. They've actually got some stability there, so why would they change it? Kind of like the time they had with Grosjean and Magnussen. They just were natural Haas drivers. K-Mag is a natural Haas driver, so just keep him. Then we have Lance Stroll, one of the biggest mysteries on the F1 grid. How long is his contract? Nobody knows. Well, I mean, Papa Stroll knows, but he's not going to tell us. Basically, his contract is as long as a piece of string, and it looked really, really solid. Ever since he came into Racing Point in 2019, it was basically like, well, okay, Lance, how long do you want to be in Formula 1? Pretty much for as long as you want? Okay, we'll make that work. I don't think it's as that solid anymore. There's a question mark on his contract, which is why they included him. It could last for 10 years, maybe it could end this year. But I feel like his performance against Fernando Alonso is shockingly weak. He is currently 80 points behind Alonso, and we're not even halfway through the season yet. This is something that is getting a lot of eyeballs in his direction, and I think Papa Stroll does not like this one bit. Stroll doesn't really have to step himself up that much. If he had the same amount of points as, say, Carlos Sainz, for example, they'd be at least 15 points ahead of Mercedes and in second place with a decent gap between the third place Mercedes team. That would be enough. Stroll doesn't have to be a superstar like Alonso, he just has to be comparable to the Ferrari drivers. That's not really a big ask, but even then, he is crumbling. He's had the most eyeballs on him ever since the days he came in to Williams in 2017 and he got his first podium in his rookie season. After that, he sort of faded into the background, people just going, oh, he'll be around F1, his father's running a team, so whatever. But I don't think that Papa Stroll will eliminate him from motorsport entirely. I feel like Aston Martin may and try and do something with the Valkyrie project and maybe come up with some kind of hypercar project. Move Lance Stroll sideways, as many of you in the comments stated, and I think that is a fantastic idea. He might go into endurance racing and lead the hypercar campaign for Aston Martin. There you go. You're not entirely sidelining Lance Stroll, you're just putting him somewhere else, away from Formula 1. Zhou Guanyu. Now, this one is a little bit of a nebulous one. That second seat in 2024 for Alfa Romeo, Sauber for the next 2 seasons, is a little bit ambiguous. The biggest question mark being Théo Pourchaire. He is the bastion of the Sauber junior driver campaign, and if he does not get this seat at Sauber, then that junior program has to be completely eliminated because it is utterly pointless. And when Audi comes along, they're going to have their own agenda. So really, Théo's time in Formula 1 has to be now. And I feel like Zhou might have a little bit of a precarious position. Don't get get me wrong, he is doing very well. He is matching Valtteri effectively in terms of points, and Valtteri's been a little bit weak, but his contract is not due to expire until 2024. So he's got at least 1 year left until his contract's done, but then again, contracts can be broken, as we saw with Ricciardo. Zhou has a rolling 1 year contract extension sort of thing. He's basically just going to have to drive for his life every single season, and then the higher-ups are going, okay, yeah, you can carry on for a year. Whew. And that is really not conducive for driver development, as Valtteri saw at Mercedes. But with Audi coming in and getting a lot of investment from the VW group, they might not need Zhou Guanyu sponsorship offers, which totals a rumored $35 million a year. And even then, the China appeal is not as strong as Alfa Romeo expected. They got Chinese sponsors, of course, but not as many as they thought they would actually be able to sign up. So it's a little bit precarious. And of course, we have the stake kick extra investment, but come 2024, I feel like Théo Pourchaire will get his chance. And even then, there are rumors about Mick Schumacher going in for 2024 for Sauber before he then joins Audi full-time. It's really confusing to be an Alfa Romeo driver right now, going into the Sauber era, at least for the next couple of seasons. So for Zhou, I'm not sure. Then we have the Alpha drivers. Tsunoda first. He basically has a rolling contract, but considering what he's been doing this season, I think he is safe. He is dragging that car up to places where it shouldn't be, basically pulling an Albon, getting a couple of points, in fact getting the only points that Alphatauri has, and they're dead last. And I'm getting the feeling now that Yuki Tsunoda is trying to do his best to try and get a chance to partner up with Max Verstappen at Red Bull for 2026, depending on what happens with Checo and Daniel Ricciardo and all that stuff. But I think Yuki's up next for that second Red Bull seat, but in a couple of years' time. But for now, he's fine. Nyck de Vries though, sorry, but you're not a Red Bull driver in the eyes of Helmut Marko, so you'd have to be really getting many points positions to even be staying in Formula 1. Technically, he does have a multi-year deal, but this whole multi-year deal thing, no one really talks about specific years. Multi-year deals could be anything. It's completely nebulous at this point. But as far as I'm concerned, I think Nyck's going to be out at the end of the year. In fact, he might be out mid-season, Daniel Ricciardo, all of those rumors, but I don't want to get into those right now. Unfortunately, he is not a Red Bull driver. There are going to be Red Bull junior drivers coming in, like Ayumu Iwasa and Liam Lawson. Nyck de Vries was a stopgap because in 2023, there weren't really big compelling candidates to take that second seat alongside Tsunoda, especially since Gasly just upped and quit. He technically had a contract until the end of next year, but he bogged off to Alpine, so much like what Daniel Ricciardo did in 2018, it gave Alphatauri a bit of a headache. Basically, in Monza, De Vries was just going, hey, look at me everyone, put me in an F1 seat, and Helmut Marko says, yeah, you go in. But now, no, he's no longer a commodity, so De Vries is going to be out. Then we have Logan Sargeant. Put simply, Logan came into Formula 1 too soon. And that's not me saying that, that's basically what Williams' original plan was for Logan Sargeant, to have 2 years in Formula 2 to hone his craft and develop, and then come into the Williams seat in 2024. However, the sporting director Sven Smeets saw his 2023 performance in F2 thinking, you know what, let's put you in right now, draft you in for Nicholas Latifi, because basically they didn't need the Lavazza or Safina sponsorship money anymore because of Dalton Capital. And then we had that ambiguous period before James Vowles came in, so there was a lot of things up in the air, and Logan basically got pulled up, I think, way too soon. And right now he is constantly floundering. For the time being, until he gets his upgrades that Alex Albon showed in Canada, because Logan doesn't have those upgrades, I'm going to reserve judgment. He only has a 1-year contract for this year to actually prove whether he's worthy or not. I think he probably should have stayed in F2 for another year. And then Mick Schumacher's another thing. He could easily be taking the second seat next year because Toto's now effectively his manager. Williams is a customer team to Mercedes and Toto wants Mick back on the grid. And quite frankly, if I were Mick, I'd take that Williams seat because right now they're going places. Alex Albon and Mick Schumacher, that would be a very good lineup. I think Albon should stay at Williams too. They're on the ground floor for something big. Dalton's investment is starting to yield dividends. They've got a very good team principal who has very clear ideas about the future, knows exactly what is needed to actually bring them success. If you want to get in on the ground floor of a major upturn in performance, go to Williams. I think it's going to be really exciting to see what they actually come up with in the next couple of years. But for Sargeant though, I feel it's a little bit very unsteady. But hey, we haven't come up to silly season yet. Give it a couple of races and I could be completely wrong about all of these things. But comment below which one you think is the most likely to lose a seat. See ya.